All right, we're back for another Elevated Marketing podcast. And
Mhm.
I've got my fun question.
Can't wait.
Do you really want someone to give you an honest answer when you ask them, how have you been?
Um, I mean, I think, like, a general rule, it's like small talk, like like, if I'm asking, say, the cashier at a store that I'm shopping at, "Oh, how are you today?"
Yeah.
I don't necessarily need a rundown of the day. I'm just being
Yeah.
polite. Now, if it's, like, someone, like, really close to me, like, I
Yeah.
would want to know,
Yeah.
and I mean,
That's a good
that sounds
answer.
maybe a little shallow. I mean, I care to hear about people's day, and if I can make
Yeah.
anyone smile, like, that's fine, but
You don't want anybody to unload on you.
right, yeah.
Unless it's like normal behavior and you are their kind of like go-to person.
Right.
Yeah, I don't think it's shallow. I'm the same way, it's kind of a pleasant, oh, doing great,
Mhm.
but there's very few people that if you asked me how I was doing, I would actually give you a full straight up answer.
Yeah.
Yeah, my answer is very similar. It just depends on who it is. It's not that I don't want to help. It's just I can't like take everybody's.
Yeah, yeah. Those might be the same people who are writing their daily diary entry on Facebook.
Yeah. Yeah, and definitely looking for the feedback.
Yeah.
That's not me. I told this to someone one time. If if I'm struggling, it's highly unlikely you even know. Like,
Right.
and
Yeah.
that's actually a characteristic of kind of high performing people is just you don't really know because it's their go-to to kind of like, yeah, everything's great, and you
Yeah.
don't like give that out. It's like, so I had somebody comment about someone that was close to me, and they said, "Well, they said everything's going great." I was like, "Yeah, you don't know them."
That's just what they told you.
Yeah, that's just what they told you. All right. Well, today we are talking about what are the key metrics used to know if your content is working. It's a tricky subject, isn't it?
It is. There are, I think, some loopholes where, it's not direct, and I know we'll get into that.
Yeah. I think it's a big subject and it's a very important subject.
Mhm.
You're producing a lot of content and you're probably producing a lot of different content. Um, for the Today we're really probably talking more about written content. We're not talking about the performance of graphics, the performance of short form video. We might bring that up. We're not talking about the performance of the content in audio format. We're really talking about the content performance and what metrics you should use on written content.
Yep.
Yeah. So, all right, let's run through them. So, first of all, we put these into two main buckets. Um, what are your traffic sources and what are your engagement metrics of the content? Fair enough?
I think so.
Yep. So, uh, I'm the big data analysis person around here. So if it's me running the show here today, that's going to be why. So when it comes to traffic source, there's actually three subcategories underneath there, and really just three areas that you kind of pull from. So when you're putting out written content, you're looking for how's it performing with SEO, how's it performing in social media channels, and how is it performing in referral channels. So let's kind of break that through. Are you still with me, Brenna? Does this all still make sense?
Yes.
You're my like Jennifer. It's you're gone too deep. You've gone too deep. Back out. Try to make
We
it
won't jump
simple.
off the deep end.
Yeah. Well, you gotta keep it easier on metrics because if you
Mhm.
go too deep, then you're measuring too much. So,
Yeah.
SEO, Search Console. So, you should be looking inside of your Search Console for individual blog posts or pages and looking for how much traffic are each of those getting.
Mhm.
How long? I think you should look back at the last 6 months. If it's not performing in the last 6 months, it's time to go back to the drawing board with any piece of content. Simple
Yeah.
enough.
Yeah. I know we're pretty big on, like, going through a content audit. I mean, in general, I think it's good practice, not only because as time goes on, some things are going to be outdated, and it's, great to kind of keep your content up to date, even if it was posted 6 months ago. But what we're more specifically talking about today is just how that traffic is performing in the search engine.
Yep, yep. And not everything's going to be a winner. And so you got to determine your losers and you have to have
Mhm.
that part of your strategy to go back and revise that content. It was probably a good topic, maybe,
Mhm.
which would go into click through rate and search console. That's kind of a subcategory underneath SEO is, if you are showing up, are you actually getting people to click through? That becomes super important when you're in the top 10 results and what your click through rate could determine whether or not you move up higher because Google's looking at that as if you have a good click through rate, then it's they need to serve it up higher. So a
Yeah.
lot of changes can happen there.
Yeah.
So still underneath the subject of traffic sources, and the next one is going to be social media traffic, and you're going to find that information in G4. I'm going to put a big giant asterisk right here and say that Google is not the best at giving social media channels the credit that it deserves. A
Mhm.
lot of that falls into dark social, and so you don't always see accurate measures there and in the accurate channel.
Yeah, I think that's, like, a huge thing to consider when you're trying to track that traffic coming from social media, organic social media specifically.
Mhm.
Yeah, allow a little grace there because it's not going to
Look
be
for
100%.
trends. Don't
Mhm.
look for 100% accuracy, is
Yeah,
what I can say there. Look for trends. Um,
yeah.
okay, and then the third traffic source is going to be referral channels. So this is other backlinks maybe that you have picked up where other people are talking about your content and it's coming back to you, or you've guest post blog and you've put your social media out or your content out on different channels. I guess that a referral channel could technically be like maybe you put your content out on articles on LinkedIn, and that traffic is coming back in. Uh, that would be one place to look at. So
Mhm.
that's it as far as traffic sources and your piece of content. Any final thoughts there?
Um, I mean, I know we were talking about this pre-show. It's like before we get into the next category of what these metrics are, you have to keep in mind like you have to have this traffic and you have to be tracking this traffic in order to get down to like the nitty-gritty of these next metrics.
Absolutely. If you do not have traffic, then the next metrics do not matter because they're engagement metrics. And so, this is, yeah, we talked about pre show, like inserting. Sometimes you have to give a little umph to your content. And what I mean by that is putting a little ad budget behind it into social media ads to start to get some traction on this content, because if it will stimulate the content in SEO and search engines because you're putting it out there, and if it's good content and it gets traffic, and then these next metrics that we're talking about, engagement metrics are good. That's really gonna stimulate it, but if you're just putting it out there and just kinda waiting to see if Google's gonna pick it up, it's gonna take longer. It's gonna
Yeah.
be harder.
Yeah. Yeah, you definitely have to promote it in some way, whether that be through paid ads or even organically on social media, which, there are a couple metrics there that you're not necessarily looking inside of G4, but maybe in the back end of the channels that you're posting on. And so there are different metrics there to kind of look out for to see how your audience is responding to the content that you're putting out, written content that is. So maybe your links or, graphics with part of that article, what you're putting that out onto the channel and how they're responding to that.
And I'm gonna make a correction. And underneath traffic sources, what I should have had there as well is email marketing because you are
Mhm.
driving traffic through email marketing. Now, we have it listed underneath engagement metrics that we're about to go through, but email marketing is a source to get
Yeah.
traffic to content that you have written. So, again, if you have that, I just want to hone in on that. If you're not running ads or you're not doing email marketing with your content and you're just putting it out to the search engines and hoping and praying that they're going to pick it up, it's really not a good idea.
Yeah. Agreed.
All right. So this is the one that is really, the second, not traffic, but engagement metrics. And a lot has changed here lately. And I know we're going to talk about that in our next show, but I just want to talk about the engagement metrics that you should be measuring. We just talked about, traffic coming from social media channels. So there's metrics there on whether or not people are even stopping and scrolling and engaging in the topics that you're putting out there of blog content. How you deliver that can be in several different formats. It
Mhm.
could be a tip that leads to a blog post. It could be a short form video that leads to a blog post. And so each one of those is going to have different metrics, but you got to look at whether or not people are even stopping and engaging and isolate it by the particular blog post that you have.
Yeah. It's like excuse me, it's like zero click marketing in
Yep.
that sense.
Yes, because you're hitting it right on the nose is if you have it in short form video and maybe even in, a tip or something like that, somebody might not click through right then and there, not likely on a short form video. And so it's going to get real confusing and messy. What you're going to actually see is brand terms increase where people just search for you by name later, like, oh, yeah, I want to go look that up later. They're
Mhm.
not clicking through. So that's a real tricky one. But you do need to measure the engagement of your topics that's happening on social media.
Yes, for sure.
All right. So the another big one is G4 and traffic coming, into the website. Once it gets in there and you're actually getting that, regardless of where the source is at, you need to measure the engagement of that. And Google just switched everything where this is a major, and I say major because it's one of the new metrics and they chose to hide bounce rate, but they're deeply involved with several new metrics with engagement, which ought to be a ding, ding, ding.
Mhm.
This is really important to Google, which again, we're going to talk about in the next show, but engagement rate is a metric you need to look at and there are particular engagement rates that by industry you should be looking at.
Mhm.
Page views. So I came in on this blog post. Did I go on and look at additional pages? That means it's doing well with getting people more involved. Time on the page. And a real good metric there is the average reader, reads roughly 275 words per minute. So, depending on how long your blog post is, you can kind of mathematically figure out how much time should have been spent. Scroll, so how far down did people scroll? And then measuring the call to actions or the internal linking that you have in there, does that get people to take the action that you desired? What do you think?
I think, this list is like, I don't know. When it comes to content, you should be praising these metrics in a sense, like, and it's true though, because I mean, these are going to help guide you on how well your content is performing. And again, you had said pre-show, like if your content is getting higher engagement, then it's also going to help in SEO world.
Yeah,
And so if you aren't paying attention to these metrics, I mean, you're just going to get left behind in the work that you've put into this content, you
it's
know.
gonna go to waste.
Yeah.
And so you have to keep going back and looking at what's working and what's not working. And not everything is gonna hit the mark. You just have to kind of realize that in your workflow. And so you have to take time to go back and say, again, whether that is a every 3-month cadence, that's probably a good
Mhm.
cadence. Every 3 months, go back and evaluate the content from the last 6 months.
Yep.
Is this doing well? And decide where you go forward, from there. And then you're, making out your content plan for the next 3 months and then rinse and repeat.
Yeah, and we have, like, an SEO checklist that we, like, pretty religiously, we run through when we're posting content, and so take these engagement metrics and kinda come up with, like, a checklist from these metrics. How are
Yep.
you gonna hit each of these metrics where you want to hit?
Yep. And so the last one is email. And,
Mhm.
kind of threw that in there with the traffic. But with email, the engagement metrics that you're looking for is the open rate of the email and the click through rate within the email are the two engagement metrics that you need to pay attention to.
Yeah, it's kinda similar to, like, in order to get the engagement, you have to have traffic. Well, in email, you have to get people to open the email before you can see the click-through rate, but the click-through rate is, I feel, what's the most important here. It's going to help you analyze, the content side of your email. Is it working? Are your call to actions working? Graphics, all of that.
Or does your list suck?
Right. It could. It
All
very well could.
the way back to there. So, I was thinking this was going to be a shorter show today, but here I look and we're already at 18 minutes. Of course, it was data related and I was going to go on and on. But I just wrapping it in a bow, there are two main things. How is traffic getting to your content? And then are people engaging with that content? And there's a lot of subtopics that we have talked about in between there. But I think that really is what you have to know in order to know if your content is working.
Agreed. It's one of those things, it's not really a set it and forget it. You still need to keep an eye on it.
All right. Well, take care.